Hey everybody, Colton here, and Spider-Man 4's title, Brand New Day, may have just revealed how Robert Downey Jr. will return as Doctor Doom in Avengers Doomsday. That's right, Doom's emergence could be directly tied to Peter Parker making a deal with the devil in Spider-Man Brand New Day to resurrect his old mentor. And I think this could all tie into why there were so many Dooms on stage when RDJ was announced as the character back at Comic-Con. Now, this isn't just some theory that I pulled out of my ass. There is evidence for this in the comics, a lot of evidence. Doom is notorious for sending his consciousness into other people's bodies, sometimes to cheat death, and even one time he took over the body of Tony Stark. And apart from the comics, there's a lot of evidence for this in the Multiverse saga. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Agatha All Along, Spider-Man Far From Home, the new Fantastic Four, What If, they have all laid the groundwork for this to happen. And in an exclusive interview with the Russo brothers, they talk about how Tony's death in Endgame is directly connected to Doctor Doom, and we will understand why RDJ was the only person who could play this role. So, I think it's possible, perhaps even likely, that Brand New Day could essentially serve as a prequel for Avengers Doomsday. Kind of like how Ant-Man and the Wasp came out after Avengers Infinity War, but most of that film took place before Avengers Infinity War. And then in the post-credit scene, we saw the snap, so perhaps in Spider-Man Brand New Day, in that post-credit scene, we'll see like the arrival of Doom that we will have already seen in Secret Wars, or perhaps the collapse of the multiverse that we will have already seen in Doomsday. Anyway, look, it's no secret that I am a fan of the RDJ Doom casting, and I've been pretty adamant that Tony and Doom will be multiversal variants of one another. I mean, really, it just seemed like that was the only logical way to take the story if you're casting Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom in the Multiverse saga. And I know many people have said, oh, but they specifically said he's playing Victor Von Doom. Well, yeah, and just have Victor Von Doom and Tony Stark be variants, just like Victor Timely and Rama Tut and Kang. They are all variants of the same being, but they have different names, personalities, and origin stories. And having them be variants of one another makes a hell of a lot more sense than what some have suggested, being that they just won't even acknowledge that the two look alike. But apart from the variant theory, there is another super viable option for why Tony and Doom share a face, one that may not require them to be variants. And these possibilities have been set up throughout the Multiverse saga. What if Tony Stark's dead body is being occupied by another consciousness? Either the consciousness of a variant of himself from the multiverse, who in that universe is Doctor Doom, or a Doctor Doom who is not a variant of Tony Stark, has no connection to Tony Stark, and who is simply looking to possess a body like he has done so many times before in the comics, including Tony Stark. Let me explain, because I know at first this can all sound a little far-fetched, but hear me out because there is so much precedent for it. And it makes even more sense when you put it in context, not only with the Russo's recent comments about Doom, but as well as the title for Spider-Man 4 now being Brand New Day. So before we jump into the Spider-Man of it all, I do just want to geek out with you for a second so I can say how awesome it would be to learn that Doom's consciousness was essentially just floating out there in the multiverse without a physical form, perhaps after his reality was destroyed by He Who Remains when he conquered the multiverse and won the multiversal war, meaning that perhaps Doom was essentially wiped from existence, with only his essence remaining in, I guess you could call it, limbo. Imagine his consciousness just drifting through time and space like a ghost, and I love the idea of this spirit of Doom hearing, feeling the snap of Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame, and that then drawing Doom's essence to Tony Stark. The Evil Dead visual of a spirit racing through the woods, or in this case, through the cosmos, and then into the MCU, and then to Earth, and then latching itself onto the body of a dying Tony Stark, a worthy vessel for Doctor Doom. My good friend Tommy Bechtold, in a video we did together over on Screen Crush, mentioned that it would totally be a Doom thing to do, to wait for the perfect host that is worthy of holding his essence. And my friend MT over at Heavy Spoilers has drawn comparisons to the lost souls of Billy and Tommy. Those are the children of Wanda Maximoff. When her hex collapsed in WandaVision, we saw in the show Agatha All Along how their two spirits went into dead bodies. Billy's almost immediately, and then Tommy's wandered around for a long time before getting placed into a new body.
Good night, Tommy. Good night, Billy.
Tommy!
But let me explain how Spider-Man could tie into all of this, especially with Brand New Day. Now, the first film of the Multiverse saga is technically Spider-Man Far From Home. It's not part of the Infinity Saga.
Alright.
And in Spider-Man Far From Home, we actually did see a resurrected zombie of Iron Man in that vision that Mysterio created for Spider-Man. Now, I'm not saying that at the time they already had this idea, but hey, it's fun to mention. Anyway, No Way Home, of course, also had a big multiversal element to it, and now with Brand New Day, we could take it even further. So after we talk about Brand New Day's connection, we will get into the three ways that this theory could pan out, the ways that this resurrection could occur. Now, in the Brand New Day comics, we see Peter Parker make a deal with the devil, or more accurately, Mephisto, to resurrect Aunt May after she was killed by the Kingpin's hitmen. In exchange for bringing back Aunt May, Peter and Mary Jane give up their marriage to Mephisto. So now, in this rewritten reality, Peter and MJ are no longer married, Aunt May is alive, and Spider-Man has his secret identity back. In the Civil War comics that came out before, Peter revealed himself as Spider-Man to the world. But in this rewritten reality that Mephisto has created, Peter Parker had Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, and Tony Stark work together to make the world forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Sound familiar?
What if everyone forgot who I was?
What?
Make everyone forget. Me.
I think it was even in that comic that we actually saw Peter Parker reach out to Doctor Doom for help. Anyway, Spider-Man No Way Home, of course, has already adapted a lot of this storyline. Peter and MJ aren't together anymore, the world no longer knows Peter as Spider-Man, and like in Brand New Day, Peter is returning to his roots of fighting street-level crime instead of swinging around with the Avengers. And something I really enjoyed about No Way Home was seeing Peter Parker do the most Peter Parker thing ever, self-sacrificing his own happiness to save those he loves. That is why he was willing to let the whole world forget him, and that's why he didn't try to remind MJ and Ned who he was, because he cares more about their future, their happiness, and their safety than he does his own loneliness. So I'm not suggesting here that Peter would selfishly ask the devil to bring back Tony Stark. No, I think it would be more of a selfless ask. I envision Peter returning from fighting crime one night. He's crawling in through his window, taking his mask off, and there stands a man in the corner waiting for him. It's Mephisto, and he knows exactly who Peter Parker is. He knows everything that happened with the spell, with the multiversal variants. And Mephisto is praising Peter for the great sacrifice that he made and his selfless service night after night to the city. Mephisto then suggests to Peter that he deserves a little bit of happiness too, but with Peter having matured greatly in No Way Home, he isn't interested in any deal that would benefit himself. So then Mephisto would take a different approach. He would bring up Aunt May, who, remember, was killed by the Green Goblin in No Way Home. Peter, of course, misses his aunt and selfishly wants her back, but he also feels guilty for being the reason she died. I'm sure if he were presented with the opportunity to trade his own life to give hers back, he would do it. Not only because he loves her, but he also feels responsible for why she is dead and why the goblin targeted her. And of course, he feels guilty about his own failure to save her. And I think this is when we could see him make an agreement with Mephisto to bring back his Aunt May in exchange for seemingly nothing. I don't think Mephisto will ask anything of Peter, and that he will say that he just wants to do this for him because of the great deeds that Spider-Man does. But then the catch comes in, the real reason Mephisto is there. After receiving a call from Aunt May asking Peter if he'll be home for dinner, reminiscent of when they do the snap to bring everybody back and Hawkeye gets a call from his wife. But in this scenario, Aunt May will be, asking him, hey, you coming to dinner? And it'll be like she has no idea that she ever died because essentially, like in the Brand New Day comics, we will see the timeline get slightly rewritten. So, as Peter is thanking Mephisto for all of his help and he's about to leave to go meet his Aunt May, Mephisto will bring up another life that Peter Parker couldn't save, the life of Tony Stark, who also made a great sacrifice to save his reality, just like Peter did. Peter is hesitant at first, but then Mephisto will show Peter visions of Pepper Potts in her living room crying over Tony, as well as Morgan Stark up in her room missing her father. Peter knows all too well the pain of losing a parent and a significant other. And this implores Peter to ask Mephisto what he wants in exchange for bringing back Tony. And this whole scene could be super reminiscent of when Tony ultimately decides that he will join the Avengers in Endgame in helping them master time travel in order to bring everybody back. We see Tony have that moment in the kitchen where he is looking at a picture of Peter Parker, and that's what makes him make that decision. So anyway, Mephisto will claim that he'll do this for nothing. He'll bring Tony back and ask nothing of Peter. But little does Peter know that Mephisto does have his own reasonings behind wanting to bring back Tony. Mephisto simply needed someone close to Tony Stark, someone who loved him, and someone with great guilt to be the one to essentially make the wish for him to return. Playing into that theme of dark spirits or genies or devilish characters having great power, but truly only being able to use that power at the request of a worthy spirit like Peter Parker.
Itty bitty living space.
So in those scenarios, we see the devil or whoever manipulate them into essentially wishing for what the devil is actually wanting to accomplish. Now, why does Mephisto want Tony back? Well, that's what I'll explain next. But first, let's talk Pet Sematary.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Pet Sematary is what I have in mind for how Tony's resurrection will work. In Stephen King's Pet Sematary, you can bury your pet in the pet cemetery and it will come back to life, but it's not quite the same as it was before. In fact, it's not the original essence or soul or spirit that was there before, it's something else entirely, something evil. We first see this with the cat that they bury. And then again when the family's son dies and they bury him there, and he does come back, but he comes back evil as fuck. I mean, think about it. What if we got that with Tony Doom? We could see Tony Stark back in the flesh, everything seems fine, he's funny, he's snarky, he's his usual self, but then the facade begins to chip away as time passes, chipping away behaviorally, but also physically. He'll begin to act uncharacteristically mean and moody and have a temper, and he'll be saying and doing cruel things, and he'll have these dictatorial tendencies that are reminiscent of how Tony was when he was a weapons manufacturer, and even when he was Iron Man and had that "I'm taking away your freedom to save you" mentality. We saw him kind of lean into that in movies like Age of Ultron and Civil War. These are behaviors that our Tony grew out of by the time we got to Endgame, and he left them in the past, having fully redeemed himself as a true hero and giving his life to save the universe, essentially all tying back to that first Avengers movie where he says this to Steve.
You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play, to lay down on a wire and let the other guy crawl over you.
I think I would just cut the wire.
But now Tony is the guy who's willing to save everybody else. But this new guy that is pretending to be Tony, he's just not going to be the same. And on top of the Tony Stark persona beginning to fade away, we will also begin to see his body deteriorate. Remember, this is theoretically a walking corpse, and you'll remember how disfigured Tony was after the snap, especially his face, and a scarred face is a crucial piece of Doctor Doom's story and why he wears an iron mask. So as this body begins to deteriorate and Tony falls deeper and deeper into this darker half, we could see him develop a new Iron Man suit to help keep his body from further deterioration and a mask to hide his disfigured face. So the theory at hand is that Doom was out there in the multiverse adrift following the destruction of his universe, which we might actually see happen in Fantastic Four with the arrival of Galactus. Or hey, maybe we'll find out that he was killed by Kang when Kang won the multiversal war and created the sacred timeline, writing Doom essentially out of existence. Either way, Doom, his essence, not his physical body, but his spirit, it's stranded out there in the multiverse. Now, here in a second, I'll discuss how this could be a Doom who had no connection to Tony Stark and had a body that once looked like, I don't know, Mads Mikkelsen or Cillian Murphy, or hey, maybe Paul from Heavy Spoilers.
Subscribe to Screen Crush, this guy.
But I think it's also possible that we could find out that this is a Doom spirit who is still a multiversal variant with Tony, and that he, when he had a body, did look like Tony Stark. And we'll explore both options, and then I want you guys to tell me which one you prefer. So anyway, with Doom being a master of the mystic arts, he was likely able to access his astral form, which we have seen in the Doctor Strange movies, as well as in Spider-Man No Way Home.
Oh my god, I'm dead.
You're not dead, you've just been separated from your physical form.
Making it to where he can survive the destruction of his reality and why he is now in limbo. His astral self survived everything. Now, personally, I like the idea of Doom's astral form being out there in the multiverse, drifting around, and then feeling Tony snap, and then being drawn to his body. But there's also the possibility that he runs into the devil while he is in limbo, and that the two work together, work out a deal to help one another, a deal that will include Spider-Man. With all the versions of the Darkhold now destroyed across the multiverse by Wanda in Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness, Doom himself may be making a deal with Mephisto to help him find a new body and to take over the multiverse together. Mephisto in the comics, of course, has a lot of connections to the multiverse. Now, the Darkhold contained instructions on how to dreamwalk, which is where you can essentially send your consciousness through the multiverse and possess a variant of yourself, just like we saw Wanda do, and like we saw Doctor Strange do to a dead variant body of himself.
But doesn't a version of you need to live in that universe so that you can dreamwalk into them?
Who said they had to be living?
We could see Mephisto say that he has the Darkhold memorized, and he can help Doom's spirit dreamwalk into a variant body of himself from the multiverse. And if What If has taught us anything, it is that there are a lot of universes where Tony Stark dies.
You and me.
He's dead.
So Doom may not have many alive variant bodies to choose from, and that's assuming that he is only able to go into variant bodies of himself, and assuming that he and Tony Stark are variants. Out there in the multiverse, some versions of this guy that we know as Tony Stark could be Tony Stark, some could be Victor Von Doom, some could work at Baskin Robbins.
Welcome to Baskin Robbins.
Baskin Robbins always finds out.
But there is also the possibility that Doctor Doom is not a variant of Tony, and Mephisto has the ability to help Doom dreamwalk into any body of his choosing. But it has to be a dead body, because the body has to essentially be without a soul, meaning that that body is essentially available, which would tie into the Agatha theory, where we saw Tommy and Billy's consciousnesses go into dead bodies. Now, whether it's a variant of Tony or a completely separate Doom entity that is now possessing Tony Stark, either way they go, I do not think that this 616, the mainline MCU, that body of Tony Stark that we saw die in Endgame, I do not think he will be the only body being manned by Doctor Doom. I think the reason that we saw so many Doctor Dooms on that stage at Comic-Con when Robert Downey Jr. was announced as Doctor Doom, I think that that was a little tease at the plot, and I think that that is that Doom is possessing multiple bodies throughout the entire multiverse as part of his plan to conquer the multiverse. Doom could be occupying a body in every single universe, and this would be reminiscent of his Doombots from the comics, puppets that do his bidding. And that would all tie into the Tony Stark and Ultron connection, and how Ultron essentially did the same thing. He had all of these puppets tangled in strings, and he controlled each and every one of them. And this could mean that the true Doom is sitting on a throne, Luke Skywalker from Last Jedi style, perhaps even the throne of Loki. But hey, that's just my theory. I want to hear yours down in the comments below, and please do feel free to subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified every time we upload a new Doomsday theory.
You're still here. It's over.